Hey, this is Brent with Lykins Motorsports, and we're going to take a look at another build. This time it's a 496 FE, and we'll do our normal process in which we talk about the entire build and then go over the dyno sheet. Then on this one I have a little bit of an update, seeing the engine being mocked up in the vehicle and having the other parts added to it. So without further ado, let's jump on into the different parts and pieces that were used in this build. Alright, so as you see it there, that's a 496 FE. It's built for Mr. Steve. If you want to look back through the channel, you can find various videos as we were doing the assembly process. A little bit of a twist. You see it there on the dyno cart with a carburetor and naturally aspirated, but this engine was actually built for Mr. Steve's pickup truck, and he's going to be mounting a centrifugal supercharger and also doing some fuel injection. So instead of having to mount the intercooler to the dyno cart and do this and that, we decided to just run it naturally aspirated on the dyno and make sure everything was up to snuff, and then he could do the supercharger installation and that sort of thing when he got it in the vehicle. So let's start with the block, and I'll show that off now. Alright, so the build started with a BBM cast iron block, and Mr. Steve's BBM block was an early block when they had the gray coating inside, and I had seen that coating flake before. So what we did was we went ahead and ran it through the oven and still abraded that block to get all that coating off. Now they later on BBM went to the black coating, and it seemed to have stayed on a lot better. I haven't seen that coating flake, but as a general rule, I really just don't like to see any coatings whatsoever inside an engine, including that red Gliptol stuff, and it's just really not a good idea. But there's the block, and basically brand new fresh cast iron. We did all the machine work to it, bored it and honed it with torque plates. It is 4-3-10 bore. I line honed the mains, squared the decks down to 10-150. It's pretty standard process in order to make sure all the decks are flat and parallel to the crank center line. These blocks, and I'm not just picking on BBM, but there are 0 aftermarket blocks that you can pull out of the box and use. They all need to be machined, and everything needs to be touched on them. Used some the aftermarket blocks use aftermarket cam bearings. So a Durabond FP01 instead of the normal F33 bearings. So those were knocked in, and gives you just a nice clean foundation for an engine build. So after the block's machined and all taken care of, cleaned, washed, we paint them either a VHT ceramic paint or a Duplicolor ceramic paint. These blocks come with ARP main studs, and you can see that we changed out the stud on that number 3 main cap there to work with a rear sump pickup. So Mr. Steve's truck was set up for a different front end, and we had to use a rear sump pan. There's the piston and the rod that we were going to use, a K1 6700 rod. The crank is a Scat 4340 4 1/4 stroke. That awesome looking piston right there is a custom diamond with a 50 cc dish. That is the largest dish that I've ever ordered with a piston, and we had the crowns coated for extra protection. That's a cool picture right there. I don't know how I did that, but it looks cool. Piston rings are 15153 millimeter, and not too heavy for what it is. That's a big old slug of aluminum with a full round for extra strength. But we were aiming for an 8.5 to 1 compression ratio, and that's what it took to get it. So quite a bit of a boost running on this one, and goal was I think last time I heard was about 1,000 horsepower. So we did pretty good naturally aspirated. Hopefully he won't have to stretch it too far to get that goal. But there's the my piston carts and all of his pistons sitting there, all measured and weighed and balanced and ready to drop in. There's a shot of the assembled short block. Crank rods and pistons are in there. Have a Cloy's billet timing set. The camshaft was a solid roller, one of my custom solid rollers. Not anything that would be hard on the street, hard on springs or whatever, but a decent street grind. 50,000 striations in the upper 250s, if I recall correctly. As you can see there's the silicone I use for the side seals. I'm hoping that will catch on a lot more, because those side seals are just a pain in the hind end, especially on different blocks, and it takes a lot of time to get those either shaved down or filled and packed so that they don't leak. I started doing that years and years ago. I've never had side seals leak, and I would encourage you guys to just fill those voids with silicone and go your own way. There's the top end. Underneath those pipe plugs in the rear of the lifter valley, we have some restrictors. So anytime I do a solid roller or a solid lifter engine, I will restrict oil to the lifters. We are running push rod oiling on this engine. You'll see here in a second. But even with push rod oiling, you really don't need all that oil going up top, and it's best to keep it in the bottom where it belongs. We'll back up just a hair. That's the cam being degreed. Always, always, always degree your camshafts. I harp on this all the time. It has zero to do with the quality of the cam company. It has 100% to do with the tolerance stack between the crank, the timing set, and the camshaft. So degree those cams. Most of the time it's okay. I've had some outliers that needed to be advanced, like 8 degrees or something like that, to hit the mark on the cam card. But there's that Cloy's billet timing set. Anytime that I do an engine with a steel core cam, I will use a billet timing set and a steel thrust plate. There's a shot of piston to valve clearance checked. As you can see, there was more than enough with this camshaft, and we had no issues with any piston valve clearance. There's the T&D. We're using a paired rocker system, a 1:8 ratio on the intake and a 1:7.5 on the exhaust. As you'll see here in a minute, these rockers use a subplate, you can see it there, that bolts to the cylinder head using the head studs. So very rock solid, and then you have another bar that bolts to it, and then each individual rocker arm bolts to the second bar, and it's pretty much a bulletproof setup. So the cylinder heads are BBM cylinder heads. These were purchased, and then we decided to port the heads out of the box. These would not support the power that we were looking to make. So these were sent to one of my head porters that I use here in Kentucky, and I think these ended up somewhere around the 330 mark for flow. Then we used some Ferrea 2200 11/32 stem intake valves and some Ferrea 1650 11/32 stem Inconel valves. So the exhaust valves see a whole lot of heat with forced induction, and you see Inconel being used on a lot of really high temperature applications. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of protection against boost. That even extends to the valve springs. So on this setup, we use some Manley Next-Tech springs along with some Manley titanium retainers, and I set these up with a little bit more seat pressure than really what's necessary for the cam. You'll see varying thoughts and opinions on this, but you see a lot of discussion about forced induction trying to hold that intake valve open, and it's often common to use a little bit more seat load to make sure that that valve shuts. So fully assembled cylinder heads there with head studs, and you can see those T&D rockers starting to go on. Alright, there's another shot of that bar that bolts to the cylinder heads. Special machine work has to be done to the heads to get those to fit, and there's a mock-up of the paired rocker system as well as the Morel lifters and trend custom push rods. We did a 3/8 heavy wall push rod due to some room constraints, but for the RPM and lower spring load, those would be adequate for the application. See there, a nice port job on the cylinder heads. There's the intake manifold that is a Victor FE and EFI intake. It's been ported as well. So I seem to catch a little bit of flack every now and again because I don't do my own port work. And apparently I'm a spender of my customers' money because I send things out to be done. The only thing I'll say to that is everybody, as Clint Eastwood says, a man's got to know his limitations. I am not good on port work. There are guys who are professional porters and do nothing but that. That is who I choose to have port my heads and intake manifold. If you guys think that you can just grab a die grinder and gasket match and do this and do that, there is a whole world of calculations and experience and theory on making things work, and it just doesn't involve popping out a die grinder and carving on stuff. So I'm sorry if I offend you guys that I don't do my own port work, but that'll be just one of the things that you'll probably have to get over. There's a shot of Cometic head gaskets going on, and for a forced induction build, that's just an extra bit of protection. Gaskets aren't cheap, but neither is this engine, so we try to do the best that we can. There's a good shot of the T&D rockers and how they mount. Just it's called a paired rocker system. So you can see there each rocker arm has has its own fasteners, which is a whole lot more stronger than a traditional FE mounting setup. Mr. Steve needed to use a front mounting plate, so we have those made. And actually he supplied those, but I think they were either made for him or modified by him to clear the various components in his truck. That is a CVR, universal electric water pump, using FE power, the end adapters, so that you can use a regular alternator bracket and that sort of thing. I fastened all those items on with studs. There is a good assembly shot of harmonic balancer going on in my billet aluminum timing pointer. There's that rocker mounting bar that bolts to that first bar that bolts to the head studs, and a good mock-up picture of our Victor FE intake. This next picture I really like, just a good overhead shot. Got our EFI ports plugged up there, and everything is being assembled, and valve cover gaskets are going on. MSD Pro Billet distributor with the steel gear. Good stuff. And there is a picture of the final product. Got our aluminum water neck on there and some Blue Thunder valve covers, which are hard to find when you need to find them. Really nice valve covers though. They have screw-in accessories, so you can run a plug or a breather or a vacuum pump fitting or a PCV valve fitting, whatever you can get to screw in. There we've got 2 breathers and 2 oil filler plugs, and MSD plug wires, and just a nice looking final assembled engine. I was able to find some EFI injector plugs. They have a nice O-ring on those, keep stuff out of the intake manifold when you're using a carburetor. So we're going to show the dyno video next. You can hear it run. Engine sounds really mean even for 8.5 to 1 compression. And then after the pull, we'll go over the dyno results. Alright, as I promised, a mean sounding engine, and here are the dyno results. So if we go from left to right, you'll see oil temperature. Always look at that first, and we did not gain, but it looks like about 4/10 of a degree, which is good. Oil pressure. Now let's spend a little bit of time looking at the oil pressure. This particular oil pan, all of the Canton rear sump pans will do this to you on the dyno, and it's exacerbated by high volume oil pumps. But even if you throw in an extra quart or whatever, they have a huge sump on the front that doesn't really transfer back to the rear sump where the pickup is, unless it's in a vehicle. So we do what we can on the dyno, but you can see the oil pressure takes a dip, and that's the reason. It's because the oil doesn't transfer very much from the front to the rear. It doesn't cause any problems. Oil filter was completely spotless on this engine. We didn't have any issues, and the load was starting to subside there after about 6,000 RPM anyway, so we are certainly within realm of safety there. Air-fuel ratios were right in there together, left to right. That's the sign of a good balanced cylinder, intake manifold. We made 566 pound-feet of torque and right at 600 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. So some engines that are forced induction make 600 horsepower. This one makes it without anything on it whatsoever. So pretty stout piece for 8.5 to 1 compression. You add a couple points of compression, you'd probably gain another 50-60 horsepower. So pretty strong piece. And here's a picture of the progress. These are old pictures. I'm sure there's been a lot more progress made, but you can see kind of why we needed a rear sump pan. That front steering rack is right there in the way of everything. Coilovers on the front, it appears, and there's that big hair dryer mounted to the front of the engine. It takes up a lot of real estate. Alternator is already mounted, and all kinds of nice goodies there. So nice looking setup. We thought it was apropos to add an AccuSump. If you're not familiar with an AccuSump, Canton makes those also. They just give you a shot, an extra shot of oil if the oil pressure dips down. And this engine will probably spend some time on the dyno chassis, or chassis dyno. Sorry, had a moment there. But you know, with the extra 300 or 400 horsepower, you know, this was added protection if the oil doesn't find its way back to the rear of the oil pan. So just an added bonus there. Doesn't hurt anything. It's actually a good thing to have for street cars and race cars, because you can hit that valve and pre-lube, prime the engine without really doing much of anything else, and it'll some of them fill themselves back up, and it's a good added protection. So another shot there of the supercharger, and this thing's going to make a lot of horsepower. Alright, so that's the end of the video. Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate all of your comments, and all the t-shirt purchases that you've made. Don't forget to look at the Teespring selection shown down below, and pick yourself out a nice t-shirt or a coffee mug or something to help support the channel. Didn't get a whole lot of done this week on the active projects that I have. I have the 464 cleaver and 511 cubic inch FE. Vacuum pump came in for the FE, but I'm waiting on some March pulleys to come in before I can bolt that up. And push rods are on their way in from Smith Brothers, and we're waiting to have Jake Brown send the intake manifold to be ported. So we'll be a little bit on that one. The 464 is pretty much done, except for I'm trying to scrounge up some valve cover accessories to plumb up to our vacuum pump, and to drill and tap for a vacuum gauge. So not too much longer on that one either. We'll be picking up another World Products 8200 deck block next week, and a finished set of small block Ford tunnel port heads. So we're going to start on a road race engine, so you won't want to miss out on that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned so you don't miss out. Hope you guys are having a good weekend, and I will see you soon.